Hello everybody and welcome back. This week's video is a little bit confusing. I do apologize. I ended up starting to record this about 2 weeks back. I was hoping to get the car back out here to the track for the last test and tune session of the year, but unfortunately it ended up getting rained out. So then I was thinking, okay, well there's one more actual racing event. Maybe I'll just enter that, go out for the test runs, and either just scratch the rest of the day or just maybe see what the car would do. It was a small tire shootout, but even that got rained out, so that kind of left me scratching my head like, what am I going to do for content this week? So instead I decided to just kind of go back and take a look at the last year since I picked up the car here, the last drag racing season, stuff like that, and just kind of do a year in review. So let's go back a couple of weeks and you can follow along with all the disappointment of me finding out that everything was getting canceled. Hello everybody and welcome back. The end of the season is coming up quick here. There's really one last opportunity to get the Chevelle here back out to the track, see if we can finally get a couple of clean passes and see what this brawler can actually do. Now I'm really short for time this week. I've only got a couple of hours here to get the car ready. I've actually got to head up north for my cousin's funeral and help get some of his estate stuff taken care of. Not quite sure if I'm even going to make it back in time for the last test and tune session, but just in case I do, I want to get the car here all ready to go. So out at the track, I was confused as to why the double pumper was running slower than that quadrijet that was so fat. It just didn't make sense to me. I thought maybe it had something to do with the tune that I put in there. So you saw me go through, change out the air bleeds back to factory. I bumped the jets way back up and made it really fat. And obviously things got better afterwards, but I think this guy here was the culprit. I had someone in the car just kind of hitting everything to wide open throttle. I was checking down the blades, stuff like that. Everything looked good. And then I put the air cleaner back on it and just thinking like what's different between the cars. And I remembered I put the drop base in there because my stud wasn't quite long enough to run with the normal air cleaner that I had. So I got back out, had someone hit it again, and I could see this thing kind of rotating whenever somebody would hit the throttle, and it was like the linkage was just hitting over there on the side or something like that. So that's why I just pulled this off entirely. You saw that we obviously ran better, but unfortunately the track started going away a bit. We were just losing traction, stuff like that. So never really did get a good clean hookup and run to see what that double pumper would have done. We had a little bit of tire spin there, but it was still about a tenth quicker there at the 1336, I believe it was. So definitely an improvement, but we could have got a little bit better. So what I want to do now is essentially put the carburetor back to what I originally had it as. So I'll go through, rejet it again, put the air bleeds back in there as I had it, and then I'll either figure out a way to get my other air cleaner back on there, or we'll just run it without it for right now. But we at least have a good idea that this was probably the culprit and not necessarily the tuning. And then just making it fat again just took a little bit away from that. So back here up underneath the hood, I'm just going to go ahead and pull the brawler off, pull it apart, swap out the jets, put the other air bleeds back in there, kind of get us back into that baseline of where we wanted to start the last runs at, and go from there. Gonna see if I can find a longer stud. That way we can go back to our normal air cleaner setup on here, which is pretty similar to what we had. It's just not with that drop dish. Again, this is the one that came off my father's car. Not much left of his old 396 sticker, but it's kind of hanging out there, and kind of sentimental reasons for keeping that one around. So see if we can make that work. Pretty much the same kind of filter elements, stuff like that. So see if we can get that back on there. But you've seen me do all of this before, so I'll spare you all of that. Gonna go ahead and just get that knocked out, and then hopefully next time you see me, we'll be back out at the track. I ended up making it back home from up north here. It's late Friday evening. I pulled out my phone, was trying to check out the track schedule, and unfortunately I saw the bad news. They've decided to throw in the towel. It's just a bit too soggy and rainy out here in Michigan, so they have canceled the final test and tune session. Now that definitely kind of rains on my parade, quite literally here. I was really hoping to get this thing back out there again. But thankfully I did record a backup video this week. I didn't know if I was going to make it back home in time anyway. So I ended up recording another video. You'll probably be seeing that now of me working on my C8. Trying to get the trunk release working on that. It got some rain in it and shorted out and that sort of thing. But we're not entirely out. There is still one more event left of this season here. We might have a chance at doing that. It is actually a small tire shootout. It's for cars with 275s or smaller. That's what we're actually running in the back of this guy here. So we could technically qualify for that. I think it was $100 to get in. It does look like they have a test session scheduled for like the morning portion, so maybe we just go do the tests, run a couple of times, get a couple of passes in that way, and then just kind of scratch the rest of the day. I mean, maybe we could actually enter the car in there and actually run the event. I'm not sure if it's heads-up racing, if it's bracket style. Pretty much the only time I've ever been to the strip, it's either been just open test and tune, or like grudge match style, where you basically just pick who you're running up against, and then you just kind of run each other that one time, and that's it. So I've never actually done an organized event, so not quite sure what we'll do with that. It did look like they were going to add another testing date on Friday, but I'm not sure if that's kind of a private test. It looked like the pricing for that was like $350. Not sure if that was a typo and it was just going to be like an open test and tune, or if it is a private event where it's $350 to get in for that, but not sure that I'd be able to make that one anyway. So there's still a chance, but that gives us now a week to kind of work on the car a little bit more. We were losing traction out there the last time. It's getting a bit cool, so maybe we could come through, try to take care of those front shocks, get those swapped around to the other ones that I've got, the 9010s. See if that'll get us a little bit more weight on the rear tires there, get those to plant just a touch better. We could try to hook up the trans brake, do a couple of other things here. So now we've at least got a couple of options here to poke around with, but it's pretty late tonight, so I'm going to call it a day here, and I'll pick it up tomorrow, and we'll go from there. Just in case any of you were wondering how the Corvette's been handling this nice wet weather out here, well, not particularly good. As you can see, it just continues to get damp underneath here. I've actually put desiccant back here, like a big gallon-sized jug of it that I use for painting and stuff, just trying to get all the moisture out of here. I've left blowers back here, and well, it just keeps letting water into this thing. It's just getting to be ridiculous here, so I really need to get my new shop up. Otherwise, I'm gonna have to be doing this thing probably once a year, it seems. But I'm gonna go ahead and just dry this out once again and hope for the best. So unfortunately, it has been an absolute soggy mess out here in Michigan all week long. It's kind of had me nervous, and sure enough, checked Facebook again, and they have gone and canceled the final event of the year as well. So that puts an early end to our season. The forecast is technically clear for this weekend, but apparently they just weren't willing to risk it in case a lot of people traveled in from out of state, that sort of thing. They ended up having to cancel late, then everybody drove in, they're out all of that money for travel. Stuff like that, so I get it, but unfortunately our season is now over, so not quite sure what to do this week. I mean, I'm still pretty happy with the car here overall. I mean, we were able to do quite a bit with this thing this year. Definitely able to get all the stuff I wanted done. We were able to get that old engine and kind of the original configuration out there, see what this thing could kind of run as the previous owner left it. I was pretty amazed that we were able to get the 15.5s out of this thing for how worn and tired it really was, and to basically just skip right past the 14s down into the deep 13s. Pretty dang happy with that for just a budget garage rebuild on that engine there, just kind of using some cheap marketplace parts. I mean, we have a, like, I think it was like a $50 camshaft in that thing. We have that $20-some Amazon Quadrojet we were running on this, the heads I picked up off marketplace. So not bad for just a quick, dirty budget build. But yeah, that's probably going to do it. Unfortunately, obviously there's not a whole lot to do this week. Really don't have to go rushing through trying to get the car set up for anything else. Got a lot of plans for over winter and stuff like that. We'll probably try to get that L78 in here. Maybe do a little bit more body work on this thing. See if we can get this front end a little bit more straightened out. Try to get that frame pulled and aligned a little bit better. Got a bunch of sheet metal for the front as well. Maybe we'll try to get that stuff hung. If we get really froggy, we might actually come out and try to do quarters on this thing. I'd like to just get all of this rust and stuff back here taken care of and everything else. But I mean, not going to be very exciting this week, obviously. So instead, what we might end up doing is just kind of going back and taking a look at all the fun ups and downs we've had with the car here since I picked it up about a year ago. It's kind of hard to imagine that it has been now a little over a year that I've owned this thing. And it's even hard for me to just remember how bad it actually really was when I first got this thing and how terrifying it was to drive. Everything was just so worn out and shot on it, and now it's just an absolute blast. You can hop in this thing, cruise it anywhere you want to go. You don't have to pick headliner pieces out of your teeth as you're driving anymore. every now and again you still get a dirt dauber surprise that drops down on you from who knows where. Those guys are really up in this thing. I mean, I took probably 50 pounds out of this thing when I first got it, but they're still in there. Every now and again you have to fight with them, but overall I'm pretty happy with how far it's come along. It has been just an absolute blast, especially just kind of piecing things together, fixing them as we go. It's made it where I can just keep driving this thing, having fun with it, and staying motivated with it. So let's go take a look at the past, and we'll go from there. So we're going to go all the way back to the beginning. I mean, this was just after I had the car delivered, and wow, she was a pile of junk. Not much to look at all, especially from that driver's side. Once we get towards the passenger side, that was always kind of the better looking side of the car, and pretty much looks the exact same to date. Not much different over here. You can see the old skinny tires that were on there. Man, those things were tiny. Can't believe these things came with 14s from the factory. And of course, our old noisemaker, the trunk. I do not miss that thing flopping in the wind, but I do miss those stripes. We'll take a look at that again here in a second. That front fender was so mangled up. Took me forever to try to hammer that out and try to make it look a little bit better. It still looks like crap, but at least it's a touch better. There's those awesome yellow stripes on that trunk. That was the only thing I liked about that trunk. I really wish I could have kept that look, but it just had to go. As you can see, the trunk was just way too rotted. That thing flapped so badly, just drove me absolutely nuts. So it's wild seeing the old interior again. It was so bad in there. Had that wrong steering wheel on there, had the warning style light gauges in it. You couldn't even see anything through, but the dash itself actually turned out pretty good. Just pull that thing out, sanded it down, hit it with some black spray paint, and it came around really good. It's still in the car. And the 8-track player, gotta figure out a way to get that thing back in there. Thing weighs a ton, so it's going to slow us down at the track, but it's just too cool not to have. Was pretty giddy when I found that in the car the very first time. Still do have that on hand, but yeah, the interior was in pretty dang rough shape. They'd pulled all the door panels off trying to find the build sheet, and they did not treat them gently. Kind of destroyed them in the process, so it ended up having to pick up new door panels and obviously picked up some carpet and stuff like that, but really transformed the look of the car, and it was just gross being in there. The back seat was just full of random odds and ends and stuff like that. You can see how bad the headliner was. It was pretty disgusting. The dirt daubers had really taken over. And what was worse was that black, like sound deadening material that was on the roof. Stuff would just disintegrate into a black powder and was just horrible. Absolutely miserable being inside the car there. In the trunk, they just had some extras as well. They had all the seat belts and all the beauty rings and stuff like that for the rims that I never did ever actually put on, but it was nice that they included them anyway. So the engine, wow, that thing was dirty when I first got it. I forgot just how dirty it was. I think the gentleman lived on a dirt road or something like that, and it was just caked everywhere. The old Quadra that was on there actually was from a 350, so it wasn't one that would have been on a big block like this. Not sure where they got it or anything like that. It was definitely not right for the car. But so many people tried to get this thing broken free, and they just abused that poor crank bolt. The thing was pretty much just rounded off. They had put a new fuel pump, it looked like, in there at some point and stuff like that, and it disconnected the fuel line from the tank. So somebody was trying to get it going, but I just never quite understood why they didn't come down here to the inspection cover. It looked like this thing had never been off before. Just kind of didn't compute to me. You get way more leverage coming down here than trying to go after that crank bolt. Looked like they'd put a new starter in there and stuff like that, so just didn't quite understand it to me. We ended up going back up top here, pulled off one of the valve covers. You can see this thing had not run in quite some time, and probably didn't look like it was running all that great when it did. Kind of a bit scorched in there, but didn't look bad. Didn't look like anything was all rusty or anything like that from what we could see. So I just went back under the car, and I did have a big flywheel turning tool. Couldn't get it to budge with that. So as we saw, I kind of went to the last-ditch effort of a long screwdriver here and the sledgehammer, just kind of hammering away on the teeth, seeing if that would just kind of shock it free. And It took me a couple of hours, but as we'll see, it ended up actually working. I couldn't believe it. Finally got the thing to break free. It did take me a while. I've actually got this section of video sped up a little bit here so you can actually see it kind of move. And even with this, you just barely see it starting to move at times. But it finally did. Just kept after it. Was starting to wonder if I was seeing things after a little bit, but finally it started moving a little bit more at a time. You can see there it moved quite a bit. It's definitely a lot better when it's in a faster high speed here. But here we can see it's definitely starting to move quite a bit more now. And then eventually it just started puking out all the fluid and garbage that people had been dumping down in this thing over the years. And once I saw that, I pretty much knew we had it. Alright, it was good enough. I knew I was going to be able to get this thing to go pretty much 360. And if that were the case, we were going to be able to get this thing going and get it running again. So now that I had the engine rotating, I just basically needed spark and fuel. So I came up to the points, checked them out. They were definitely pretty corroded, so I went in there, filed on them a little bit. Gave them a couple of Mortske flicks here, and that definitely made them come back around. Checked it for compression and spark, and everything looked to be really good. So it was just a matter of dump a little fuel in it, and away she'll go. So the first start always did confuse me just a little bit. I didn't really understand why I was only getting exhaust and mouse house blown out of that passenger side pipe until a little bit later when I crawled back under there and realized that the driver's side pipe had actually rusted out just in front of the forward axle. So that's why we got most of our smoke out of just the one side, but that was also where the worst piston was as well. I did like that old glass pack sound, and I remember after getting that thing up and running the first time there, just filling up the fuel bowl, letting it run dry, I was feeling really good about myself, so I'm like, okay, yeah, let's come through, do an oil change. You can see me being careful here, making sure everything's nice and clean, that there's not an extra seal up there. Everything else, get the nice new filter in, get some nice fresh T4 in there. In my mind, I was thinking, okay, yeah, I'm going to be able to take this thing out for a test drive here in just a couple of minutes. Everything is going great. But we all know that wasn't about to happen. I mean, here I am showing you guys that I topped it off and everything else, that it's at the full mark, just getting ready to roll. And, well, yeah, that was not going to happen. Was kind of confused at first, like, what in the world is going on with this thing? Did I not check it well enough? Did I end up leaving two seals in there? So I'm like, okay, maybe that was the case. I'm going to go through, put another one in there. This time be extra certain that I didn't have an additional O-ring at the top, something like that. But as we all know, that was not the case. It made no difference. Ended up just having so much oil pressure through there that it actually broke my oil pressure gauge. As you can see, the regulator was just stuck. Needed to come out. So it was a bit of a surprise to me that I ended up having to pull the engine out of this thing to get to the oil pan. Apparently there's just not enough room with the big block cars to get it out from underneath, so ended up being okay in the end because I had a couple of other things I needed to address at the same time. But of course you get it out and then you're looking at it and like, this thing's disgusting. I need to clean up on it a bit. Caught some flack because I didn't go through and clean up the engine bay. I kind of only focused on the engine here. Hit it with the putty knife. I had like a wire brush and a wire wheel and some stuff like that. Used a couple of different degreaser products. Hit it with the pressure washer a couple of times. Went through a few cycles of this and then just finally gave up and said good enough, and ended up coming out alright in the end. Definitely wasn't the greatest, but a whole lot better than where it started. So after all of that, pulled the oil pan off finally, and really it ended up not being too bad in there. A little bit of sludge at the bottom. Wasn't really any kind of metal flake, anything to be really concerned about. So pulled the oil pump off, started looking through there, and sure enough, as I suspected, the pressure relief was indeed stuck. I thought about just trying to figure out a way to get that thing disassembled, knock out the little pin there, and try to get access to it and just clean it up, put it back together again, but they weren't that expensive to just go ahead and replace it, and I didn't want to have to pull the engine back out, so I just decided to go ahead and buy a new one. I did check through the rods and stuff like that under here, made sure everything felt okay. Everything seemed to be pretty tight, so nothing of concern. Pretty much was just gonna slap in the new oil pump and go from there. Cleaned up on the oil pan, as you can see, got all that sludge out of there. Got it nice and clean. Put in a new oil pan gasket. Got the new pump in there with a new pickup. And I didn't weld that one in there. It was in there pretty tight, so I felt like it was okay. It wasn't gonna fall out. And basically just went with one of the one-piece gaskets. That worked out really nice. Slapped it back together and didn't change a single other thing. That was the only thing we addressed in there the entire time, because I wanted to keep that engine as close to its original condition as possible. Did have to change the engine mounts. The other one kind of blew apart on me, but ended up just dropping it back in there and getting everything back connected up again. I think I did pull out the bore scope just to kind of peek down there, but saw there was just a little bit of scoring on some of the cylinders. It wasn't all that bad, so I'm like, all right, let's just go ahead and get this thing ready to go and just send it and see what happens.
No weird noises. A little bit of an exhaust leak. No leaking fluids.
I was really impressed with how much the engine came around. It cleaned up a ton just in that short little period. I hooked up the boat tank, oil pressure, everything else was looking great. It was running pretty decently, especially for the condition of that quadrijet. I was kind of impressed. But there was obviously the one last little test that I still had yet to do. So for being just a one-wheel peel, it definitely did put on quite a bit of a show for itself. It bogged down just a little bit, but I was also getting smoked out inside, so I didn't know if I should stay in it, if I should get out and take a breath. It was bad inside of there. I mean, you can see the smoke just pouring out, but it was really thick. And so was just overall quite impressed with how well this engine came back around. It had been sitting off the road for 45 years, somewhere in that vicinity. It was running pretty decent. It wasn't smoking all that bad. I really didn't know what to do. I was planning on just pulling that thing out and scrapping it and building up the L78 in its place. So this kind of threw a monkey wrench into my plans and kind of set the stage for the entire coming year of just playing around with that kind of old 72 402 that had been dropped in there and seeing what we could get out of that thing. But overall, at the end of this particular day here, I was pretty dang impressed with the car, but there was a long road yet to come. So I kind of put the whole engine thing out of mind and just started focusing on aesthetics and making the car actually drivable. As you can see, there was quite a bit of front end damage on this thing. The bumper there looked like it had been shoved up into the fender. Fender was kind of all mangled up. It just did not fit right at all. I spent a lot of time with the hammer and dolly trying to get that at least somewhat straight. As we can see here, it just fit terribly down at the bottom of the dog leg back there. Was pulling away from the door and stuff like that. Really didn't realize just how much actual damage there was back there. I realized that the front headlight cover was missing, front eyebrow, whatever you want to call it. I wanted to get that in there so I could put headlight buckets in and kind of make it look a little bit more complete. And then when I pulled that fender off, I realized, oh wow, the entire cowl section there had kind of been just caved in at some point in time. So it does look like they make replacements for that, so it shouldn't be too bad to fix. But at this point, I just kind of put it out of mind, shifted focus to the interior since that was just nasty. Got that old package tray pulled out of there. It's pretty rusty back there from where the water got in through that rotted out window seal. I'll have to come through and fix all of that at some point, possibly over winter, but for right now I just threw a package tray back there, kind of hide some of it. Then I just went through and started cleaning up on a lot of the old material, cleaning up on the seats, hit it with some like vinyl cleaner, and it just soaked in that vinyl cleaner. But I did a tremendous job. You can see how much better the seats look. Even the old passenger rear section of the door panels and stuff like that ended up coming out pretty decent overall. I was pleasantly surprised and spent a lot of time just cleaning that headliner crap out of there. I don't know what that stuff was made of, but it would just turn into a black dust. It was just terrible. But overall, the interior cleaned up real nice. The floors were incredibly solid on this car. Just a couple of small little tiny spots that need to be addressed. Just picked up a carpet kit from Summit, slapped that in there. And it's amazing how much just a carpet kit can really just go and transform the quality of an interior. Picked up a couple of door panel kits. Had the top rails left over from the old ones, so I just got the kind that you glue down yourself. Ended up not being too bad getting those installed in there. It's usually a little bit cheaper. They seem to fit better than if you get the aftermarket upper rails. So that's why I just decided to glue them in myself. And overall, I was pretty pleased with how it ended up coming out. They look pretty decent in there. I kind of rushed through it. I probably could have done a whole lot better job, but in the end, the interior really came a long way just with those couple of small little things. My approach to this was I was just going to replace everything related to steering, brakes, and suspension. Rather than trying to restore or keep any of that original stuff, it was just way too gross, way too worn out. So decided to just go and splurge and get everything brand new. You can see we got new master, new booster, new springs sitting there, all new brake hardware, drag link, tie rod ends, the rotors, spindles, everything was replaced. Got a new fuel tank and sending unit, even though this is the one I can't seem to get fuel in. But here's why. I mean, just look at how nasty and worn out that is. It was something else. So I decided to go with BMR suspension and BMR springs up front, and I've also got their suspension in the rear as well, but they add some additional caster up front. The thing drives beautifully, turns in really nicely. In terms of the brake, it's pretty much just stuck with more or less factory style replacement. Nothing really all that special. Just rather than cleaning up any of that original crap, I just went ahead and bought all new stuff. And I should have folded those tabs over because that stupid bolt ended up working itself free later on. But overall, I was pretty happy with it nonetheless. The rotors and the calipers came as a kit from Summit. Really wasn't looking for slotted and drilled. Just was what they happened to have on hand. It ended up being cheaper than any of the other options out there. So here you can see all the brand new front end hardware. Everything from the idler, the drag links, tie rod ends, the sleeves, everything was replaced because I didn't want to drive this thing around, hit a bump, and then wonder where it was going to end up going. And look at all of the mud and debris I ended up pulling out of there. It's just something else. This thing was pretty much Dukes of Hazzard living most of its life, it seemed like. And in the rear, I also went back through back there, replaced all of the rubber lines as well for the brakes. They were pretty much shot and it all swelled up. They were not getting any kind of fluid or pressure through them of any kind. So the car was definitely starting to look a whole lot better by this point, but it still wasn't quite ready for its maiden voyage. I remember there was an issue with that original Quadrajet where as soon as you'd kind of come off idle at times, it'd have this really bad hesitation, especially when it was in gear when you were trying to take off. So I just didn't think it was safe enough to drive like that. I didn't want to risk it. So what was surprising to me was that I actually picked up the old Amazon Quadrajet, the one that's still been hanging around and has given our brawler a run for its money all the way back then. For some reason, I was thinking I ended up getting it a whole lot later, but no, it ends up making an appearance here, and it actually ran pretty dang good in the car. But I got that in there. I was working on just tuning things out a little bit, and that's when I discovered kind of a foreshadowing of what was to come. That's when I started having that cylinder that was dropping out. And we just had a cylinder that was just losing compression every now and again, so pulled the valve covers off there and just had to go and adjust all of the lifters ever so slightly to get that to come back in play. And I think that was just because the valves were working themselves through the head. It was just that worn out. So this appears to also be around the time that I pulled the dash out and repainted it and put that new dash pad in. And I mean, that did an incredible job for just bringing that interior around. And the interior, obviously, it doesn't look great, but I mean, it looks presentable at this point in time, and that went a long way into doing that. In addition to that, it looks like I was out here trying to get the headlight bucket finally installed, and this is where I just really started to figure out how bad all this front end damage was. Ended up having to make a notch in the actual core support so I could actually lower the core support down even further because the frame rail is bent up ever so slightly. But kind of ended up working out in the end, and you can see now that with that in place, it looks like a Chevelle again. I mean, it's kind of all mangled up still and things don't line up perfectly, but it's definitely a whole lot better than it was. It's actually kind of presentable now. So I was finally able to take the car out for its maiden voyage, but it was just absolutely terrifying, and what you're seeing now is the culprit. So all of the rear suspension was just so worn out, which should be no surprise given how bad the front was, but every time you'd accelerate, it'd feel like the rear end of the car was just wanting to lift up and push towards the right and steer the car towards the left. And then as soon as you let off the throttle, it would kind of snap back violently the other direction. And it was just terrifying, not safe in the least. You can just see that everything back there was just worn out. Every bushing was just cracked and had a ton of slop in it. So decided to go ahead and just order up the BMR kit. Very happy with the results. It's been working great for the last year. Everything is really good, really solid. I don't get any kind of squeaking noises from it. I lubed it all up when I put it together, so I'm very, very happy with the BMR kit. So this brings us to just about a year ago from today. So this would have been mid to late October at this point in time, and I was hell-bent on getting this thing out to the track. Just had barely got it roadworthy, and here I am trying to get it to pass tech now. Got an overflow installed there for the radiator, got the battery tie down taken care of. For some reason, I just wanted to see what this thing could do. Kind of in that as-is condition. I was like, if this owner had taken it out to the track before they parked it, what would this thing have ran? Obviously, we had to fix a couple of things along the way. I came back through, changed out the oil again because I just got tired of it dumping out on the ground when I was having those issues with the oil pressure regulator. So I just put in a bunch of old used oil instead. So I think here I am putting in some Castrol GTX Classic 2050, just whatever was on sale probably at Walmart at the time. And at this point in time, the car ran pretty good. It still smoked a little bit, but I wanted to get it out to the track and see what it could do. So with the car running good, even though it was a little bit smoky, I didn't care. I wanted to get to the track. But to do that, I needed to get a seatbelt in the car. Thankfully, the owner that had taken everything apart just kind of threw all of it in the trunk. Had all the hardware and everything I needed to get something going here. So just kind of slapped that in there. I ended up using the two buckles from the rear seat instead of trying to fish them up through the little holes that are actually in the bench seat. I just figured that was not going to happen. But of course, my bad luck had to rear its ugly head and, well, took it out for a test drive and the rear brake came apart. Not really sure what ended up happening back here. You can kind of see that like brake tensioner rod piece is sitting on top of the shoes. Not quite sure how it managed to get there, what exactly happened, but yeah, things were not good. The more I kind of inspected back there, I realized that axle grease and stuff like that was getting through there, or differential oil, and was making a bit of a mess. So the seal was gone, and then I was playing around, and the bearing itself was pretty suspect as well. So figure while I'm in here, might as well go and do the wheel bearings while I'm back there. So of course that means pull the differential cover off so you can get access to the C-clips. I wasn't able to find any stamping numbers there on the side to figure out what the rear ratio was. Unfortunately, it's like on the actual surface where it bolts down. Ended up finding out later that this was the factory 331 rear end, so nothing too fancy, but got the old bearings pulled out, ended up slapping some new ones in there. Was still thinking I might have a chance to make it out to the track, but in typical Michigan style here, I stepped outside and it was kind of another soggy situation like it has been this year, where they ended up canceling that event, so that kind of ruined the plans back then as well. So maybe it was all for the best. It gave me the opportunity to go ahead and pick up that Monte Carlo trunk and get rid of the old noisemaker on the back of this thing. Can't imagine what that'd have been like going down the track with that thing just flopping in the wind. So definitely always fun rewatching this, getting rid of that stupid thing and getting the Monte Carlo one on here. And well, I was pretty happy to find that. Just lucked into finding another forest green trunk that fits on there, and it's got a little bit of a patina to it, so most people don't really notice at first that it's not the one that was meant to be on there. Every now and again, people will notice the little shield around the keyhole, and will notice that it's a Monte Carlo trunk, but for the most part, nobody really notices. So in typical track week fashion, just wouldn't be right without having some other issue crop up, and well, the alternator decided to just give up the ghost. Bearings started going out on it, it was just making horrible noises, so had to go source a new one, get that slapped in there. That seemed to take care of all the issues. Did occasionally every once in a while throw belts, but we made it up to the track, and for some reason they gave us a number. We made it through tech inspection, so let's go ahead and relive the very first pass that we did in this thing just about a year ago. All right, we are ready. So unfortunately, only had 2 passes in that day, and both of them were terrible. Just nothing but fuel issues both times. And well, ended up being that just those OE style replacement factory pumps were just complete trash. Finally ended up just going with the Carter Street Super, I think it was, 120 gallons per hour, low pressure, high volume pumps, and that ended up working out just fine for me and has been working out great ever since. But definitely a frustrating way to end, because that was the last event of the season, so I had to wait, kind of like I am right now, all the way through winter to go out there and try it again. So I really didn't do a whole lot last year during the off season. Was kind of bummed out about the garage situation, but Smitty had sent me out the new SS wheel there for the Chevelle, so I was able to get rid of that later style 71, 72, Monte Carlo, whatever you want to call it, the wheel that everyone kept complaining about being wrong, so big thanks to Smitty for that. Underneath, you can see I've got a brand new rear gear. Ended up getting the 373s to drop in the rear of this and decided to get rid of the one wheel peel, so had to crawl back underneath the car and pull the differential apart once again. As always, this time I was able to actually find the actual correct stamping, and it was the factory 330 that was in there, but wasn't going to be good enough for our purposes anymore. We needed something a little bit better than an open, so went ahead, just picked up a Yukon kit. It was pretty cheap at the time. I think it's called their DuraTrack or something of that sort, of DuraGrip. Not entirely sure at this point in time, but it's ended up holding up pretty well here over the season. So just went through, dropped that in there. Obviously got an installation kit, replaced all the bearings while I was in there as well. Got everything all shimmed up nice and correct, and it's doing a pretty decent job. All I had to do now was just wait for the track to open up, and the day finally came. Got back out there, had all the fuel issues taken care of, had the nice limited slip installed back there, so was really hoping for good things, and the day went pretty well. So definitely wasn't a bad showing at all. Ended up getting around a 15.6 as the best run of the day. It was right around the 15.8s on average. It's mostly just traction with those original, just super tiny and skinny tires that came on the car when I bought it. But I figured there was more to have in the car, so we just waited a little bit, did a little bit of tuning, and we went right back out to the track to see if we could improve. So overall, I was pretty pleased with the result there. About the best time we got in that configuration was 15.50 there at 86 miles per hour. Not bad whatsoever. The car was pretty consistent at that point, right around that mid 15s. It was getting 15.50, 15.51, sometimes 15.6, depending upon if I chirped the tires off the line. So I knew traction was kind of a little bit of a problem to me, but really the best we were probably going to get were these 15.50, somewhere in that vicinity. But decided to go ahead, pick up some ET Streets, just get some different rims, go to 15s, easier to find tires in that size, obviously. But little did I know this was going to be setting us up for my string of real bad luck here. So the tires were doing their job, and for the most part, everything was going fairly decent for the day. But on that last run, I heard a little bit of a popping noise, and well, didn't quite hit me until after I had pulled off the track that my window was just gone. It had decided to vacate the premises there on the last run and kind of started setting up my real bad stretch there at Stanton. But car with the new tires was still right around that mid 15 range, so I knew at this point in time that we were pretty much done with this configuration. We'd given it all we could. It was time to pull that engine apart. Now, the one thing that worried me the most about this was how I was going to get that stupid crank bolt out. I mean, that thing was wore so bad. Thankfully, I had like a stripped bolt remover. I was able to kind of hammer that thing on there and got just enough of a bite to get that thing out. And then I just ended up replacing on the bolt there, but just went ahead, started stripping off everything out of the engine bay and started pulling the engine out once again for the second time. But was just pretty surprised at just how worn out this thing was when I really started getting into it. So the galley was actually a little bit cleaner than I expected it to be, just from the way that the valve covers looked when I first pulled those off. Thought it'd be a little bit more kind of burnt and sludgy under there, but not bad. The bores were surprisingly good on it and pretty straight and true. They didn't have much of a ring ridge on them. There wasn't a lot of carbon on the pistons. I was actually kind of surprised, but then when I got to the heads, the valves were just starting to pull right through the heads, especially on the middle cylinders. Not sure if we can really make that out from the camera angle here, but that was probably the worst of it. And then obviously went through and was looking at the valve seals and stuff like that, and they were just smoked and toasted. So explained why the thing smoked so bad and probably why we're down on power. This was obviously a 72 block and had been a reman engine and kind of remanufactured with even lower quality components, so it was probably even lower compression than what the 72 would have originally came with. So I was just really shocked that this thing managed to motor itself down into the 15.5s with the condition of this engine. And the thing that still gets me to the day is just how worn out that cam chain was and the fact that that thing did not skip a tooth. I mean, you could almost get it to skip just by pulling it and playing around with it by hand, and the amount of slop that that thing had was just unbelievable, but yet it still ran fairly well overall. Was definitely pretty surprising. The second big concern I had for this engine was just the quality of the bores. I hit each one with the ball hone just real lightly, but I wanted to check and see just how bad that rust was going to be. Since the engine sat so long, I knew there was definitely rust in there. You can see a little bit here. Wasn't all that bad on number 7 back here, but number 4, you can see just how bad that one was. That was by far the worst of them all. Now, I did come back, hit that a bit more with the ball hone, but you just couldn't get all of that out of there. The bores, for the most part, were still pretty true. They weren't really out around all that much, but you could definitely see that thing had taken some abuse. That one there gives us a little bit of blow by even still, so probably would be worth boring this out a little bit, getting some new pistons in there, something like that, if I keep this engine around a little bit longer. But the name of the game here was budget rebuild. Just slap some bearings in there, checked the clearance and everything. They came out really nice. Put some new rings in there after giving it a more aggressive ball hone, and dropped all the slugs back down in the hole here, and just kind of pretty much went budget with everything I could find. Everything was just kind of low dollar on clearance parts that I could pick up pretty cheap. The bearings weren't that great a quality. I think they're just Summit branded. The rings I think I got on sale off of Amazon for fairly reasonably priced, so pretty dirt cheap rebuild going on here. I still to this day don't quite know how I ended up with 2 different timing sets when I ordered from Summit there. They sent me out the Howard's brand and the Summit branded one, which ended up essentially both being the same. So they were kind of white label, but just slapped one of those on there. Obviously we had to give it a little bit of paint, make it look a little bit nicer, get it that Craigslist rebuild quality going on here. Start slapping things together. Went together pretty easy overall. The only regret I have is using that stupid Dorman front cover there. That thing fit absolutely terrible and leaked like a sieve afterwards, so definitely regretting on that. Then here we can see that I threw in the Freak Show Performance Torque Converter. Really no complaints about that. Seems to be working out pretty good. Might have a tiny little bit more slip up top than I expected it to have, but not too bad overall. We'll have to see how that thing does with the L78 once that's dropped in. So I got the engine dropped back in there, got it through break-in, chased after, I don't even know how many transmission cooler line leaks. It was just absolutely ridiculous. Should have just left those things alone and never put in the new ones that I had, those stainless ones. It was an absolute nightmare. It just seemed like it was stripping out every fitting and just leaking from everywhere. So finally got that all taken care of. Kind of got about 400 miles into it, just letting the rings kind of come around and settle in. See if it would just kind of seal up a little bit with how bad the rust was in some of those holes. But After that, it was just a matter of getting it back out to the track and see what would happen, and well, bad luck struck again. So I'm still not exactly sure what ended up quite happening here, but I think something in the drive shaft ended up letting go first, and it just caused mayhem and carnage as it came apart here. You can see the drive shaft got ripped in half. The yoke, or the slip yoke, was busted and was missing one of the ears off of it, but most of the caps and stuff like that for the U-joints were still there, and I just replaced on all of that not that long before, so I didn't think it was anything with the U-joints, but who knows if one of those caps worked themselves free, something of the sort. So thankfully we weren't really under all that much power, and we didn't have nearly as much speed as the car could have had, so it ended up not being potentially as bad as it could have been. The full extent of the damage really didn't set in until I got the car back home, hopped down in the pit and took a peek underneath. I mean, it cracked the tail housing there completely 360 degrees around. There's a nearly 1-inch gap here at the front near the bell housing, and was just unbelievable the amount of damage that had happened. I wondered why the modulator ended up blowing out, but here you can see when I got the transmission out, it was just in chunks. I had to fish a lot of those big chunks of the bell housing out from behind the flex plate. It was just something else. So definitely wasn't planning on having to swap out the transmission this early into the season. I was thinking this was going to be something I was going to be doing over winter and maybe going with the 200R4, but got a smoking deal on the FTI Level 4 TH400 here, so couldn't resist. Also got a killer deal on the BMM ratchet shifter. I've been on the fence about what kind of shifter I wanted. These things work really well with the bench seat, but they're kind of pricey. I ended up finding this thing on Amazon. It was a warehouse return, so I got a killer deal on it. Been pretty happy with it, so just went and got the transmission mounted up there on the little jack down inside the pit. Made it super easy to get that thing in there. Went in like a breeze, didn't really have to fight anything, but of course still ended up having a couple of issues to address. So I wanted to make sure that there was as minimal chance of this happening again as absolutely possible. Went out and ordered up a nice aluminum drive shaft from PEM here, put my slip yoke on there, started trying to mock everything up, get it mounted into the vehicle, and well, things did not go quite to plan. It ended up being just a touch longer than what I'd actually spec'd out, and that did not work with the chromoly pinion yoke that I picked up for the 12 bolt there. And as we'll see here in a second, it just did not give me enough room up there at the front for the slip yoke. It ended up just being a bit too tight. Wasn't worth risking the transmission, blowing out that tail housing, stuff like that. So had to go out and order up a different unit. Just got the cast style this time, and that ended up giving me just a little bit more wiggle room. Figure it should be plenty strong enough. We're not really going to ever run probably more than like 550 horsepower in the car. That should be plenty for it. So ordered that up, threw it on there, test fit everything. Gave me a good 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch of travel on the slip yoke. Figured that was absolutely perfect. So after that, took it out for a test drive, and of course the next thing to do was get it back out to the track and see how it would do. And the combination did not disappoint. I mean, that thing powered us right past the 14s, deep into the 13s, 1341 at 99.47 with that crappy, extremely rich Amazon Quadrajet. Could not complain whatsoever. But as always, we knew there was more speed. We knew there was more to go. Everyone had been screaming for the last year to put a double pumper on there, so picked up the Brawler, got it on loan temporarily. We slapped that in there, spent a whole lot of time tuning on it, trying to get everything dialed in, get it ready to go, and well, we went back out to track to see what this Holly could finally do. Now, it took a couple of tries, but we were finally able to get one pass where the Brawler ended up beating the Quadrajet. Not by much, only about half a tenth, but it did beat it. Got us down to 1336 at around 99.87, somewhere around there. So it was a touch better, and it was spinning the tires off the line as it did it as well. So I really wish we could have got back out there just to see what this setup could have done. Getting some actual decent traction, getting a little bit of tune in that Brawler. I think we could have got down to the 13.2s right around that 100, 101 mark, which is what I originally predicted for the car, but fortunately I don't think we're ever going to really know. I think it's time to just pull this motor out and go to the L78 and start getting us into the 500s and start aiming for the deep 12s at this point in time. So that's going to do it here this week. I hope you guys had nearly as much fun as I did this season. It was an absolute blast. Met a ton of great people. I'm already looking forward to next season. Cannot wait. And I mean, pretty much just go out there and race against myself, just trying to see what I can get this thing to do, trying to get some better times. And for me, it's just fun. Cannot complain whatsoever. Very happy with the way that this thing has gone, but we're probably going to end up retiring the old 402 in here finally. We're going to pull this out, probably get the L78 built up over winter, drop that in here and be ready for the next drag racing season. Hopefully we'll be in the deep 12s, tickling at the door there of the 11s perhaps, somewhere around there. Looks like it's going to be a lot of fun. Got a couple other things going on in the off season here. Got to build the engine for my Skyliner. Going to be putting together an FE stroker for that. The current engine in there is a 352 and it's just on its last legs, so need to get that built up. We'll probably be working on my Austin Healey a bit and some other projects and stuff like that, so you'll see me be bouncing around a little bit, but we'll probably be working on the Chevelle here as well, so there will be some content coming at you this time, I promise. I'm not going to disappear like last year again. Try to stay motivated even though it gets awfully cold out here, but that's going to do it here this week. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time.